Hey, it's Bobby from Franklin 3. I'm here with Shelby, one of our sales associates, and we've been teaching Shelby the basics of reloading. So Shelby is an outdoors person, outdoors woman, or whatever you say. She's hunted a lot, but she's never reloaded, so we've been kind of going over the basics. So we're going to approach this little segment from the standpoint of a novice. Shelby's never reloaded, so we're going to ask her some questions. So Shelby, what do you need to know to start reloading?
You need your overall length.
Okay, and where do you find that?
The book.
In the book, okay. What else do you need?
You need to know your powder measurements.
Powder measurement, okay. And you find that in the book?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. What else?
The weight.
The weight of the bullet.
Yes.
So you need to know what projectile you're going to be loading.
Yes.
Okay, and we've decided we're going to load some 150 grain match grade boat tail hollow points, right? As some Sierras.
Yeah.
Okay. What else do we need?
Mm-hmm.
Caliber.
What else do we need?
We need caliber. What bullet you're actually loading? What round?
Yeah.
So in this case, we're loading
300 blackout.
300 blackout. All right. So we've got casing here. Now we have some pre-processed brass already deprimed, resized, everything. We're just going to keep this step a little bit simple for Shelby. So everything you need to know is in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we've talked about our powder. Now, 300 blackout is not a large capacity casing. So we're going to go by the book and we're going to choose which powder. What powder did you determine was the one we want to try?
H110.
Okay, H110. And why did we decide we want to try that one first?
Why do we need to use that one?
Okay, so good question. H110, if you look at our data in the book, if you follow the book, you can never go wrong. The book's going to give you maximum load, it's going to give you minimum load, but we're doing the H110, and our starting load is around 1,500 feet per second. Our max load is 1,900 feet per second, but for safety's sake, we're going to kind of shoot middle of the road around 1,700 feet per second. Because we know if we go there, we should be, because H110 on 1,700 is 14.2 grains, we should still be reasonable on our casing volume, meaning that we're not just slam full of powder. Whereas if we wanted to go 1,700 feet per second on some of these other ones, you know, your CFE Black or your H4198, we'd be at 17.4 grains. Now, that's sometimes not representative of how much volume's in the casing, because some powders are fluffier than others. But we're going to start with the H110 because we think we can get 1,700 feet per second with 14.2 grains and still have a reasonable volume inside the casing. So that's what we're going to try with. Now, you also mentioned a casing overall length, so it tells us in here. So find me that bullet in this book.
What grain was that?
150.
150. Which one was it?
Well, there's your bullet, so you can look at it because it's an actual picture of the bullet. Yeah, so it's a full metal jacket boat tail, and you notice this one has a cantilure, and so does the picture. So that's the bullet that we're loading. That's a boat tail, which meaning it's got a little taper in it. It's going to make it a little easier on you because we're not going to have to bell the mouth of this casing. Okay, so Shelby, one of the things that you didn't ask, or you didn't say you needed to know, is what primer to use. Now we're loading 300 black. Do you know what primer that takes?
Small rifle primers?
Small rifle, yeah, because a 300 blackout is really a shortened, necked up to 308 223. But if you don't know it, where can you find that data at?
The book.
In the book, that's right. The book, it'll tell you right here in the very front. The book has all the information you're ever going to need. It's going to tell you what primer to use. Got that? And then depending on what you're loading, it has that load data in here based off of what you're loading. So we're loading 150 grains. So all our information is right here. So as long as Shelby follows this for her recipes, as far as her powder, her grain weight, going with reasonable loads, she should be safe. So in just a second, we're going to start setting this up. We're going to measure out our powder measure. We're using the Hornady Lock and Load AP because it's a real simple press. It's hard to make a mistake. And Shelby has loaded some 223s for us to kind of get familiar with it. So we're going to set up here in just a minute and we'll go through those steps with you. Okay, Shelby, so what do we need? What's the first thing we would set up to get ready to load? And we're using our Lock and Load AP. It's a 5-station press. It does a lot of stuff. So what's the first thing we want to set up?
We would need to resize, make sure the bullets were ready.
That's right. So
Casings.
The casings. We would need to resize, but in this case, we've got a pre-processed brass. So how do we determine that it's pre-processed? That is actually resized like we need it.
We would use the case gauge.
The case gauge, right? So we're using this Lyman set for 2 reasons. This is the Lyman MSR die set. It's a small base set, which works great for your modern sporting rifles, which is your AR platforms, but it comes with our case gauge. So, Shelby, show me how this works. Okay, so what does that tell us?
That it'll fit in the gun's chamber.
Okay, yeah, because this mimics the SAMI specs for the 300 blackout. So as long as it fits in here, it's going to fit in your rifle and it's going to fire. So in this case, because we have the option to not do anything in that first stage, we don't have to resize. We don't have to knock the primer out because the primer's already out. So the first step is going to be what in our case?
Making sure that we get the right amount of powder.
And that's the second step. Think about the first step.
The primer.
Primer, that's right. So we got to put a primer in it. So let's do that. Okay. So is it in nice and smooth, nice and flat? Okay. All right. So now we're going to what do we have in here powder-wise?
We have the H110.
H110, and what's our load? What do we want to go by? Remember, our book's going to tell us everything. We want to go middle of the road. We're shooting for 1,700 feet per second.
14.2.
14.2, okay. So how do we measure that before you put powder in there?
Our scale.
Yeah, but remember, we'll take the casing with a primer, and we're going to weigh it, and we're going to zero that out. So let's put it there. Let's take it to 0. All right, so that's at 0. So now we can measure what powder goes into this casing. So let's fill her up and let's see what we got. Okay. Now, carefully without spilling. All right, let's see what that weighs. 18.4. So what's it supposed to be?
14.2.
Okay, and then at this load data, 18.4 is way past our maximum load. So we need to lower the charge of our
Powder.
charge. That's right. So how do we do that?
How do we do that?
All right, so this, very simple. This one actually makes a lot of sense because when you screw it in, it actually decreases the amount of volume inside this rotor. You screw it out, it increases the volume. So in this case, we want to decrease the volume. So let's just turn it scientifically that much. Okay, that was a random turn, so we don't know how much that was, but we're going to keep doing this. So let's dump our powder. And remember, there's one thing I don't like to do. If I'm going to dump powder, I like to thump it like a cigarette because that's really cool. You know, James Dean done it. But don't bang it on the side of your hopper because I just don't like to jiggle all my stuff. All right, so let's reweigh it, make sure we're still on 0. Let's zero it out. Okay, and now let's do it again. Okay. All right, so now we're 13.5. So we went too far, but 13.5 is around what? How many feet per second?
1,600.
Yep, so we want to load it around 17 because that's kind of middle of the road. This gives us some load data from a 1,500 all the way up to a 1,900. So let's shoot for that 17. So we're still shooting for 14.5. So what do we need to do?
Increase.
Increase. And how do we do that?
By turning.
Yep, which way? In or out? Clockwise or counterclockwise?
Out.
Okay, which is counterclockwise. Right, Shelby, counterclockwise. Counter. Yes. So go counterclockwise. We're still on 0. So let's take it. Let's turn it like a quarter turnout. So about like that. Okay. Let's try it and see. Now this part, you'll have to fine tune it a few times. It might take you 4 or 5 or 10 times to do. But the great thing about this powder measure is once you get it set up, it is very repeatable. All right, so we're 14.0. See, we need 14.2. So let's do this. Let's don't change it. Let's dump that and let's fill it again and let's make sure we're repeating 14.0. All right, so 13.9, so it's very close. So let's turn it out just a little bit. You know, you turned it about a quarter of a turn last time. This time you're just going to turn it just a little bit, like the equivalence of 12 o'clock to. Okay, that's great. That's perfect. That's scientifically exact. We're at 14.1. Okay, so we can keep playing with it. So let's dump that and run it one more time. But before you run it, let's reweigh our casing, make sure we're still on 0. Okay, so zero it out. All right, so let's make sure we're happy with our powder. So what'd you do wrong? You forgot to zero your casing out. So dump your powder. Now, put your casing over there, zero it out. Now let's try one more time. Okay, what do we got?
What's
14.1.
And what are we shooting for?
14.2.
Okay, so we can keep tweaking it if we want, but let me ask you a question. How much of a difference is it going to make it at 14.1 to 14.2?
Not much.
Okay, because 13.5 is 1,600 feet per second. 14.2 is 1,700, so we're going to be slightly low. But tell me why we go middle of the road from this book down. You remember what I told you?
Why is that?
Because if we go middle of the road, we don't have to be so precise because we're loading just range ammo, just some fun ammo to go shooting. We're not worried about being precise. We're worried about doing some quantity. So if we're going middle of the road 14.2 and we're slightly over on 1 or 2 loads and we're 14.5, we're well below our maximum of 16.3.
Okay.
So that's the reason we do that. Okay, so we're happy with that chart. So let's go. I want you to explain to me what the next station does.
Okay. So the next station is going to make sure we have the powder.
Okay. And how does it do that?
By this little thing going in the air.
Okay, so when that goes up, you know you got
There's-
powder inside the casing. Okay, and if there's no powder, what does it do?
It won't go up at all.
It just stays down. Okay, so go down. We'll go ahead and bring it back to the bottom. We need to set up our seating die. Okay.
Okay.
So what we're just gonna screw that in. About right here, roughly, because we're just gonna start. This is our bullet, and we know what our overall length is, right? 2.14.
Okay.
We already got our caliper set up. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna put this on the bullet, just like you normally do. And we're gonna come up and let's just see what kind of resistance you got. We may not be seating anything at this point.
Nope.
Nope, okay, so let's screw this down some more. Okay. All right, so now we just touched the bullet, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so don't go all the way down with it because we don't want it to index.
Okay.
You screw this down some. All right, come back up. Let's see what we did. Okay, is the bullet starting to seat?
No.
Not yet. Okay, come back up. Make sure the bullet stays straight.
Okay.
Okay, so
That time
you felt it going in that time, okay? All right, so let's come back down and go ahead and take it all out. Now this has a cantilure on it, so we're gonna use that cantilure. Now, keep in mind this is a 30 caliber bullet that's usually shot in a 308, but we're shooting in a 300 blackout, so we're gonna use that cantilure as our index. So we're gonna work it down to that point. We'll lock this down, and we're just gonna use this top one to work it down. All right, so come back up with it. Okay, and then come down a little bit and just screw that down. All right, come back up. Bring it down, see if we can, you still see the cantilure?
Yeah, just a little.
Okay, so let's do that. Okay, let's see what we got. Down a little bit more. Okay. All right, so we're right there at that cantilure. So we are that much too long.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna go down just a little bit more. We're pretty much gonna get it to where you can't see that cantilure. So we're gonna turn this just a little bit more. Try that.
That's right there at it.
Okay. Yeah, so we're good. That's our length. That's 2.14. See that? So that is a loadable, shootable bullet, right? Remember how we check these? Will that shoot?
It will.
All day long. Okay, so now we have a bullet with a cantilure. We have a die that we can set up to actually crimp that. So I'm going to show you that tomorrow. That's going to be tomorrow's little quick study, and then you'll be set up ready to go.
Okay.
Okay? See you tomorrow, Shelby.
See you tomorrow, Bobby.
All right, so day 2, you've got your depth set up. Now I'm going to show you how to set up a small crimp on the top of this, because this bullet does have a cantilure, and a cantilure is the little groove in there that is designed to have the top of this casing rolled into that slightly. Very easy to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to set it back in place. I'm going to move our seating portion of the die up and out of the way. Now I'm going to come all the way up with my ram. Then I'm going to screw my die down until I feel it contact the actual casing. Once I feel it contact, so what it's doing now is actually touching the neck. I'm going to drop my ram a little bit. I'm going to turn it about a quarter of a turn. I'm going to lock it down, and then we're going to check our crimp. That's all it takes. All it's doing is rolling the top of that casing into that little groove. That's all the crimp does. It just holds it tight. You know, if you're using an auto loader, or if the bullet's designed for it, it's designed just to hold it a lot tighter. So now that that's set, we're going to reset our depth. So we know we're good on our length because we've already measured that. We're 2.14 as the book says. So now all we do is we come back up. Now that we know we got our die set here, we're going to lock that down. And now we're going to just turn this back down until it touches. So we know that's our actual depth of the bullet. Now we'll run one more, and then we'll do our measurements and make sure everything doesn't need to be just fine-tuned a little bit.
Okay.
But that should have us exactly what we want. So does that fit in your case gauge? Yes, it does. So that's perfect.
Okay, now let's see and make sure we have everything like we want it. Make sure the primer's in good.
Yeah, zero your case.
.1.
Okay, and that's exactly what it was a second ago. So we're
Yep.
good with that. We can live with that.
And we have powder.
All right. Let's see if it fits. There we go.
Yep.
Does it fit or is it a little long? Okay.
And do you want it to go under this or?
Yeah, I always do it in the body right here.
Okay.
That way you can kind of see. So we need to drop it just a little bit.
Okay.
Not a big deal. All we've got to do is loosen this up. Then we're going to turn that about so. All right, try it again. A little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, that'll work. And the reason we had to fine tune that is remember we dropped it to set our crimp, and then we just want to make sure we got our right length. And so that's good. So will that shoot? Okay, Shelby. So now as a new reloader, you load 223. Now you set up some 300 blackout. What is your impression of reloading as a novice, as a beginner?
It's not as hard as I thought it was going to be.
Okay. What did you find to be the most surprising?
The book actually tells you about everything you need to know about how to reload, what your weight needs to be,
Yeah.
overall length.
Yeah. So if you follow the book, it's really hard to make a mistake. It actually takes a lot of the guesswork out. Actually eliminates all the guesswork. It has your powder loads, has your casing overall length, your casing specs. Everything is in the book. One of the tools that I recommend for every loader, whether they're novice or not, is a very good chamber gauge, case gauge, because that lets you see how you're doing as you're building, and that gives you a lot of confidence, doesn't it?
It does.
Okay, so we're going to let Shelby load some 300 blackout, and then we're probably going to let her shoot them while I'm on the other side of the vehicle, just in case. But I think she's fine.